Thank yous of my own on behalf of the curators of the exhibition, Josh and Royce, Christian Zapek and me, mainly for the sort of effort and goodwill that has gone into us being able to present you with our conceptualisations of John Cage. First of all, I wanted to thank Ricardo, Maria and Maria for inviting us and for their receptiveness to and support of our curatorial vision. We're also very grateful to the team here. Again, Ricardo, Maria, and also Joanna Galma, and all their colleagues for all the hard work that everyone's put in over the past several months. Since it's impossible to present Cage, much less conceptualise aspects of his oeuvre without performance, this was very important to our thinking from the outset. So we've included on the performance program what we believe are the crucial Cagean perspectives of sound, the indeterminate score in the expanded field of performance, and the institutional critique model of lecturing, aimed at questioning and dismantling power systems behind pedagogy and the acquisition of knowledge, and replacing the passive spectator with the active listener. These are all the things that Cage was trying to do, and we've included them by the people who we've asked to come and perform. So in order to present these performances to you, Alison Knowles, Taketo Shimada and Margaret Lang Tan have travelled from New York with their instruments, and Tom Hannes has come from Belgium. So we're deeply grateful to them for being here, and we're very excited to see and hear their performances that they're going to share with us today and tomorrow. So I'm sure there's others I'm forgetting. Thank you to the team who've helped, the technical team, and also to the European Cultural Capital organisation. So let's begin. We'll leave it like it is for a moment. So John Cage was born in Los Angeles in 1912, 100 years ago this year. Cage's great contribution to artistic practice in the late 20th century stems from the fact that he had spent his life using his own medium, that of musical composition, to place the creative act at the centre of a changing world. His oeuvre was radical almost from the outset, from the percussion period of the late 1930s and all the new sounds that materialised, to the invention of the prepared piano in 1940. But the most influential and discipline-straddling dimension of his project happened in the early 50s, when he defined the concept of experimental composition and developed the idea of indeterminacy. This new open mode of scoring not only altered the course of modern music and dance, but generated a new horizon of conceptual possibilities for artistic practice that is still feeding into advanced art today. Yes, so through a focused but ever exploratory body of work over a career spanning more than half a century, Cage's challenges to the discipline of music affected other disciplines as well. Generations of creators, not only composers but dancers, poets and artists, have seized upon aspects of Cage's project selectively, according to their artistic needs and the zeitgeist of a particular moment. This has created the sense of not just one oeuvre to conceptualise, not just one John Cage, but many Cages, and as well as an array of exceptional artistic interlocutors. So this exhibition, Conceptualising Cage Now, and actually I have to make a joke about the date on this because I put March 9 instead of March 10, so a bit dyslexic on dates, you'll have to forgive me for that. So yeah, the exhibition Conceptualising Cage Now takes up the challenge of these several strands that I'm speaking of Cage's project. And it shines a light on their surprising relevance and validity now. As much a kind of think tank as an exhibition, the curators, Joao, Christian and I, have concentrated on giving the installation a dimension of quietude, seriousness and unvarnished modesty. What we did not want is for our challenge to the visitor to be overshadowed by the business-as-usual exhibitionist spectacle model, which seems to be more and more the default mode today. While the exhibition is grounded in Cage's scores, we have privileged one of the most important monuments to post-Cagean scoring, the book and anthology. So with a dedicated wall facing the scores that were the artist's inspiration, on the opposite wall, that book has been exploded out from its binding to be experienced in space, in the here and now. Each module in the show asks you to be active, picking up Cage's scores and examining their structures at the beginning, to finishing by assembling your own set of references, which we hope might be fuelled by the way the show has prompted you to conceptualise Cage in your own now, as George Brecht once said of the event score. The works we have chosen by artists who were close to Cage or working in his midst: Alison Knowles' collection of scores from the early 60s and her bean turner, a playable instrument which doubles as a wall-bound sculpture, Alan Capro's recipe for happenings and his much more open-form activities, George Brecht's collection of early event scores, begun in Cage's class in 1959 and published by Fluxus in 1963, and the realisation of also his 3 chair events, Henry Flint's pioneering concept art and blueprint for a higher civilization, a film of Simone Forti's earliest dance constructions, recently performed in Los Angeles, and finally Andy Warhol's Silver Clouds, a chance composition if ever there was one. The choice of works is intentionally sparing of the additional works by other artists. So they're few in number, and they've been precisely selected for their template quality. The aim again is not to crowd out the scope for thought and invention. We made it a priority to leave enough space and air for the visitor to build his or her own ideas about aspects of Cage that he or she feels are relevant, and considering these works by the artist as examples of several possibilities. So today we have the opportunity to recognise Cage's major innovations as a series of conceptual catalysts through which the composer shifted the terms of creative practice at large. We can trace the radical development of his scores decade by decade from conventional formats, that is musical notation with the 5-line staff paper, to transparencies and diagrams, and also purely verbal instructions, which of course anticipate conceptual art. All of these establish the conditions for the indeterminate scores for unknown outcomes. Cage's composition models were developed alongside the advanced art of his time. To grasp this historical process is to see how many conceptual openings he created, participated in, and extended. Just as Cage's oeuvre is once again at the centre of current thought, and particularly this year in his 100-year anniversary, this exhibition has been organised to reopen the case, as it were, and to outline the field of transformations of the score, to reveal how John Cage's oeuvre placed musical frameworks at the centre of advanced art. If the exhibition is concise, I hope this lecture will fill out some of the historical context for you. If we can have the slide. Sorry, this got stretched a bit, but it's a normal size page. So John Cage's first mature compositions were written between 1939 and 1951. This was the period in which he became involved with modern dance. Regularly finding himself as a collaborator with the dance, he found modern dancers to be more receptive and more interested in modern music than classically trained musicians. In his early years, he composed for percussion instruments, an interest fueled by his studies from 1934 to 37 with Henry Cowell, the inventor of the string piano. That's a technique of sounding directly on the strings of the piano rather than playing the keys. So everyone thinks Cage's prepared piano came out of nowhere, and in fact had a slight precursor. And then the other famous source for him was Arnold Schoenberg. In 1938, Cage moved to Seattle to join the faculty of the Cornish School. There he became an accompanist for a dance company, of which Merce Cunningham was one member. It wasn't his company, he was young at that point, but he was a member. And Cage organised a percussion ensemble. It was at this time that Cage expressed his conceptual use of percussion in the form of a lecture called The Future of Music, Credo. Composing for percussion was a voyage of discovery for Cage. He sought more new sounds in order to escape musical expectations. So his first construction in metal, which is one of the scores out there, used unorthodox instruments such as a water gong, which is like a gong sounded under the water, anvils and brake drums of cars. So this is very strange instruments for 1939. Imaginary Landscape from 1939 as well was the first in a series of works with that title that treated new technologies as sounds to be composed. In this case, he was using variable speed turntables, playing frequency records. Can you have the next slide? I'm just showing you an image of his first percussion concert. Interestingly, this was when Cage first came to New York. He was actually staying at Peggy Guggenheim's place, and he met Marcel Duchamp and all these people. And he managed to get a gig at the Museum of Modern Art. And Peggy Guggenheim was very upset because she thought that he should do it with her. So she decided to kick him out of her house and not pay the cost of the instruments to come across the country. So Cage was completely devastated, and apparently Marcel Duchamp had to console him. Anyway, so he ends up in an art museum. And I always think this is very interesting, you know, rather than a music auditorium. He's not at the Metropolitan Opera, he's at the MoMA, right? So there's this sort of avant-garde audience who's already ready to hear him, his ideas as a musical intervention into a larger field. Interestingly, sorry. So this is quite funny. This is his wife. That's her in 10 minutes. This is Merce. There are whole gangs there. So this devotion of Cage's to percussion contributed to his increasing focus on duration structures, since structures based on harmony and melody were unavailable to him in percussion. So he began to see the inherent logic of an emphasis on the structure of time, into which any sounds could be inserted. In that Future of Music Credo lecture that I mentioned, Cage announced, quote, "If this word music is sacred and reserved for 18th and 19th century instruments, then we can substitute a more meaningful term, the organisation of sound.